Welcome to the Metapod podcast, Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. My name is Jake. I've got my co-host Sean here with me on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. As you can see, it is very bright in Sean's. The sun is immaculate. And, well, audio listeners can't see it, but everybody else can. So, Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's sunny right now. The weather here is crazy. I was literally walking around, and I mean literally. I was literally walking around one of the cities here over the weekend. It's sunny. I go into a store and I'm just like looking at art, whatever, in the store. And then I just hear this like noise, like it's coming from the ceiling. And there's a window up there, but I'm like, oh, did they put like a rainscape, like a sound thing in this art exhibit to like, give ambiance? And I look up, no, it's hailing outside. And it was sunny 3 minutes before. And then we left 2 minutes later and it was sunny again.
Yeah, I want to have a conversation with Mother Nature. So
It's crazy.
If you don't know, Vegas is very hot most of the year. We have been in what we call extreme heat warning for the last 3 weeks. With it being like 100 degrees every day, like all that stuff. It's pretty hot. Not as hot as it can be in Vegas. And this is Fahrenheit, by the way. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees Celsius. Right? 32. I think. It's
Sure.
either 32 or 36, one of those two. Anyways, yeah, it's hot. But so I went home to Indianapolis over this weekend. I had a family thing, and in Indianapolis, it's been like 85 degrees, been pretty warm. It's been really cool, 85. I get there on Friday, it's 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Saturday is a warm 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunday's a high of like 35. And then today, at the day that we're recording this, Monday, it's back up to 75. And I'm back in Vegas. So I just want to know who decided that when who is not adjusted to cold weather anymore, because I've lived in Vegas for 3 years, decided that it was just going to be frigid when I got home. I don't even own a winter coat now.
Jake, you didn't even bring a coat, I guess, right? You like looked at the
No.
weather, said like, "Oh, it's totally nice there. I'm just gonna bring two t-shirts," and that would have been rough.
Yeah, I had to borrow one of my dad's coats, so shout out my dad. But anyways, this is not your local weather channel. This is a Pokemon TCG podcast, and we've got some stuff to talk about this week. Mostly post-rotation decks, right? Post-rotation is starting. If you do not know, on Pokemon TCG Live, decks should already be rotated, so you can already get ahead, start playing a lot of these decks that we're showcasing and talking about on Pokemon TCG Live. But for your local cups, challenges, local play, IRL, that is not going to happen until April 10th. So that is something worth noting and worthy to add, because I know there's a lot of confusion, especially with some of our local people about rotation, because it's so dumb that there's like a 2-week difference, I will say once again. But yeah, there's that difference.
I mean, yeah, I understand the logic, but it does feel like Pokemon could probably start doing away with the 2-week release to legality window. Yeah, because like so many people go to pre-releases and those start 2 weeks before release. So it does feel like there's like actually more of a 4-week window where everybody wants to play the new stuff, but nobody is allowed to play the new stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's weird.
I think that there's a really interesting conversation about that 2-week window, because like I've always enjoyed the 2-week window. Like I've never like really minded it, except when they have like major events right before the 2 weeks of set becoming legal. Then I'm like, we should have pushed this to next week when it could be a cool new format. But like the 2-week window has really allowed me in my time in Pokemon and like playing much more seriously of like being able to get the cards that I need before like a major cup challenge, major event, regional stuff like that. And like One Piece, for example, I know I always talk about One Piece, but I'll pull it together, I promise. One Piece only has a 1-week window. And so I feel like there's a lot of times like a lot more pressure It's been interesting, like as someone who has experienced like a 1 week window and a 2 week window to like, and even in local play, there's not a 1 week window. So like people already having decks, and in One Piece, you have a lot of people being like, "Oh, is the new set legal? Is it not?" Like stuff like that. So I don't know. Like I don't think I would mind if the 2 week window went away, but I do appreciate the 2 week window. I will say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they do it is they don't want
Hmm.
players to feel overly pressured. So in that way, it's good. Yeah, I can't really
I
fault
will
them.
say, yeah, I can't. I mean, it can't be too bad
No.
for the most part, but just wanted to also say that even though the data is not really out there yet or something like that, there was a Champions League that happened in Japan over the weekend. I wanted to pull up results and tell you all about it because I know what won, and guess who? Alakazam. So big win for the Metapod this week. I will say this past weekend.
Yeah, we take all the credit for that. Yeah, I
Yeah, I mean we've been fans of the Alakazam deck since day
It's true.
one.
That's true. Well, I
Yeah.
I am an OG Zam player, if that such
Maybe
a thing exists.
maybe not all of us were believers, but we were lovers of the Alakazam deck, I will say. I won't say that I've always believed in the deck, but I've always loved the idea of drawing 1,000 cards in a game.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
like Jake said, it's not post rotation technically, but like it has all access to all of the cards. It's just
Yeah.
it has bonus cards right now in Japan, but we are
Oh,
gonna look at.
also
Oh yes,
one more thing. Post errata last episode in our post rotation guide. For anyone who does not know, Energy Search is actually staying in format. We talked about it
yes,
as a resource that is rotating, and I think at the time when we made the slideshow and stuff like that, we did not realize that it was coming in perfect order. So because a lot of times when we look at like set reviews, a lot of reprints are left out of those sites. So we
yeah,
didn't actually realize that perfect order was going to be in the set. I was thumbing through my perfect order pre-release and all the cards that I got, and I was like, wait a minute, energy search. So just wanted to vocalize that for anyone who maybe isn't in our Discord or which you could join in the Discord in the link in the show notes or the description below. But just wanted to put that out there for all you before we go into now our post rotation decks.
yeah. I'm very happy that Energy Search is staying because
Mm-hmm.
I think it plays an important role still.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like what I was saying, how like Switch and stuff, it feels like it just should, it's not like an incredible trainer, but
no.
it's one of those trainers that should just always stay. We should have access to it.
But looking at some results, we actually are just going to look at the Champions of Doom. If you don't know, this is an online tournament run through TCG Live, and it's run by friend of the pod, Zach Roy, Senor Doom, if you will, person who did our playmat art.
And
Um,
also a episode feature,
yes,
did an interview
yes,
of him. I
yeah.
remember
So he's been running these Tournament of Dooms for years now, I think, on
since
Limitless.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
since the platform was built.
And so his tournament had how many players did this have? I think a couple hundred, 300 and some odd.
Hmm.
Let me just double check real quick.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
it's a very popular tournament as it's been going for a long, long time. 341 players
Jeez.
in total. So it's a pretty substantial size. Obviously, it's smaller than like a major regional, stuff like that. But it's a good sample size in terms of like what people are trying out, some cool deck lists. You do have to go like 9-3 or something like that in the tournament in Swiss to be able to even qualify. And so regardless of the level that you're at, I feel like 9-3 is nothing to scoff at. And players around the world are playing in this from Great Britain, Czech Republic, Norway, Japan. So it's a pretty cool event that's put on.
So looking at some of these lists, and if you've been listening to the meta stuff that we've talked about for the last month or two, a lot of this post rotation stuff, it will mirror what we've seen in Japan during Champions Leagues, but topping this tournament, Jake, I think it was maybe less of a surprise, but like meaning like people have seen the deck, but the fact that it won, I think, was a surprise, which
Mhm.
is a grass deck. It is we might have talked about it before, a Teal Mask Ogre Pawn Arboliva EX deck.
Yes, this is very, very similar in build to the one that got second place in the last Champions League out in Japan, showcasing Arboliva, Meganium, and Teal Mask Ogrepon. We talked about Teal Mask Ogrepon and how this is just a generically good card, right? Especially if you have any sort of synergy with Grass because of that Teal Dance ability to be able to draw cards and whatnot. And Sean, what does Arboliva EX do for anyone who does not know?
I
Because it
mean,
is a bulk card.
it's a three. Yeah, it was a bulk card until about 2 weeks ago. It's
No, it's still a bulk card. You can still get
well
a playset for
for
like
like
you can still get them each
$2.
for under $1. Yeah,
Yeah. Arboliva
still bulk.
EX is a stage 2, 310 HP grass Pokemon. It has 2 attacks. The first attack, I want to say the first attack is, I don't know. I think people probably use both attacks actually, but first one, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon 6 times. For each time you choose that a Pokemon, do 20 damage to it. It's not affected by weakness or resistance. So the nice thing about this attack, 1 grass energy, you can choose different Pokemon to do the 20 damage to. So you can choose one
Mhm.
Pokemon 3 times, one Pokemon 2 times, one Pokemon 1 time. So it's a cool sort of 120 damage spread for a single energy, which can help to pick off certain annoying, bench sitters, maybe Pokemon that haven't evolved yet. I think this is really strong. And then the second attack, which I do think is used in the deck because you're also playing Meganium,
Mhm.
is just Aroma Shot 160. It recovers from all special conditions. I don't think that is particularly that doesn't really matter all that much, I don't think.
No,
But
the big selling point of it is one, like you're saying, you're able to snipe all these things, especially in the early game, right? You're using Itchy Paw and Budu to be able to do 10 damage somewhere and lock your opponent out of item cards. The Ollie Oil Salvo. I have to like make sure I read it correctly. Because I want to say like Alibaba when I read it at first. It's dyslexia, but
it's fair.
Oil Salvo, being able to use that, being able to snipe in some bench sitters, spread around a ton of damage, set up a lot of knockouts for coming in with Teal Mask Ogrepon EX, cleaning up with its big high amounts of damage potential. And 160 as well can be just something to set up a knockout for when maybe you don't have a bunch of energies and Teal Mask Ogrepon is not going to do those high, like 300 plus amounts of damage. You can get a big 310 HP body that'll more than likely stay alive on the field, be able to tank a hit, and then you can run away and go back to Teal Mask Ogrepon. And even Meganium, right, as a 160 HP Pokemon, does have that 140 damage attack, so it can attack as well potentially if you want to use it, but more than likely you're just going in with either Arboliva or Teal Mask Ogrepon.
I'll also point out the 160 for 3 energy is it's really good numbers for some of the other good decks in the format that are grass weak. So like is the Mega Absol EX, it's grass weak as well?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's a
So
dark type.
that's
So
grass week. Marnie's Grimmsnarl is grass week. I can never remember, is
and Zoroark.
Enzoroark grass week or is it
Yeah,
fighting week?
and Zoroark is grass week.
So because of those
Mhm.
weaknesses, that 160 doubled takes out all of those Pokemon, right? I think
Mhm.
the Mega Absol, the only thing right now in format that would save it is if they had like the stadium that does plus 30 to basics, which I
Okay,
think
yeah.
I think would put it at 330, which technically is out of range, but like I don't know. That's a tall order, I think.
Mhm.
So I think that's the other reason that this is like a really good partner Pokemon because, as you said, it can tank hits, but in the right matchups, it's doing perfect numbers.
Especially with Force of Vitality, your two stage twos can evolve very, very easily, especially with the help of Dawn and Bug Catching Set. I love this card. I love seeing this card in the different grass decks, Sean. bug catching set is just so good, not only for the efficiency of getting those evolved Pokemon to be able to chain those evolutions off of the Forest Dive Vitality and basically cheat them out, but also just getting your energies to draw one off of Teal Mask Ogerpon is so nice.
Yeah. The one thing that I would say that is a little surprising about this deck is we're playing Ultra Balls, 4 of them, and 2 Pokepads.
Mhm.
I can totally understand it. You are playing Dawn, so that usually finds you all of the Pokemon that you need. We are playing a 1-1 line of Noctowl, which is really, I don't think I've ever seen a 1-1 line, but
Yeah, it's definitely odd, I will say.
the only other card that we highlighted in our set review or in our post rotation guide that I don't know if it's the right card for this, but like it could fit in. I would consider, if you're playing any sort of Noctowl engine, also playing Cyrano. Like
Mhm.
Dawn is going to be more often than not your go-to, but situationally you may want to be able to grab 2 Teal Mask Ogerpons and the Arboliva, and Dawn's not going to be able to get there for you.
Yeah, I mean, you're running 8 different EX Pokemon or 8 total cards that are EX Pokemon, right? 4 Ogerpon, 2 Arboliva, a Pheasantipede, and a Meowth, right? So those are easy searches in your point to be able to find those if you've already got set up your Dollives, your Bayleafs, to be able to evolve off of something like Dawn. Yeah, there's that flexibility that you can do.
Yeah. So that's the only thing when I look at this list, because again, lists are going to change between now and the first big tournament of post rotation. But all in all, I think it was a big surprise that this won the overall event. But in a new format, especially post rotation, the decks that tend to do well are the decks that really land in terms of consistency. I think Tord Reklev is probably a great example of a player who that is their wheelhouse. Like, how do I make the most consistent deck doing X? And this deck
Mhm.
has energy acceleration plus draw engine all on one card. It has a stadium that allows you to not even bother with rare candies, which is huge in post
Yeah.
rotation format where we lose TM Evo. So
And Budu running around everywhere.
right, exactly. So I think between all of that, you do look at this and think to yourself, man, it may not be the strongest deck in terms of power ceiling, but the consistency may be unmatched in the new format with this deck.
I've also just really enjoyed kind of thinking of more of the meta, Dawn. I really loved to see Dawn in these decks that run these like different stage 2 and different evolution lines, right? Because now, like Alakazam loves Dawn. This deck right here, this Teal Mask Ogerpon, Arboliva Meganium deck, loves Dawn as well. I have really enjoyed Dawn's usage in the decks that love using it. It's not like an overly meta card like Iono or Lily's Determination or something like that, but it's like it feels really well designed.
Yeah. I mean, if Pokemon wants to encourage people to play stage 2 Pokemon, creating a
Mhm.
supporter as strong as Dawn is the way to do it, right? You
Yeah,
know,
Dawn just gets so much value.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but that's what got first place. And Jake, what was in the mix here in that top few tables?
I do want to talk about En's Zorark EX, right? En's Zorark EX, a deck that we've known about for a while and has had some different iterations and changes just depending on what's been going on and stuff like that. This one getting second place, going back to the En's Darmanitan, which I know is something that has left a lot of lists. En's Darmanitan has not really been something that a lot of people have kept their eye on and stuff, but sticking back in here, and especially from Ascended Heroes, the ends Zekrom being an interesting and automatic new inclusion within the deck with that attack that does 250 damage. Also having access to a shred attack on that Pokemon. Cannot complain about, I will say. Still running around with the Serranos that you were talking about earlier, and a bunch of different other kind of cards like Janine's Secret Art, works very well with this deck, having dark Pokemon that you want to accelerate energy to and of the sorts. And also, you were talking about like Alakazam counters. I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago. There's a one of Zerosix mechanics in this deck.
Yeah, I don't love seeing Xerosix machinations. That
Or
scares
yeah, yeah,
me.
yeah, machinations. Yeah,
I mean,
that works.
it's just it's I don't I'm scared. It's a good card. Don't get me wrong. It's a great card. Uh it's a good counter to Alakazam.
Well,
Um
yeah, I mean, I think that in general, like, it's just probably a solid card, right?
yeah.
Because, like, Iono has left in the format, Judge is not very present. Like, there was a single Judge in the Arboliva, list that we looked at before, and in this Enzoric list, there is no Judge. People are running Unfair Stamp, but there's not a lot of hand disruption cards that are running around. So maybe if you can't find your unfair stamp, or maybe there's a whatchamacallit, Budu standing in your way from like an unfair stamp, a judge, or I mean, a Zerosix mechanic could be something to dwindle the hand down on a lot of these decks, especially because, even like in the Enzoric matchup, right? If you're facing against this deck, with that trade ability of trash one, draw two, that's a +1 card in the hand every single time, and you add other draw like Pheasantipity or stuff like that. There could be a lot of cards in the Enzoric's hand. So I think that there's just value, especially with Meowth now in the format, of maybe just running this one of in there. But this Enzoric deck not running Meowth.
Seeing the Enstar Manitan and the Arboliva doing well though, Jake, there is more and more of a case to be made. Neither of these lists are running Shaman. And I do think that you might be advised to start running a copy of Shaman if these two decks are two of the top decks moving
Well, I
into.
think doesn't Arboliva get around Shaman
Let me
because it's
read.
placing damn. Actually,
It's doing
I'd
20
have to
damage
look
6 times.
exactly. Yeah, so actually, never mind. Maybe Shaman does protect it.
I'm trying to
I
think.
gotta
Yeah,
look at
choose
Dragapult
one of your
EX.
opponent's Pokemon 6 times, do 20 damage to it. So Shaman won't stop it from choosing EXs usually, but it will stop the problem of that deck of like killing your
Yeah.
pre-evolution, your basics before they can get into stage twos. Um,
Hmm.
and that's super rough. So yeah, one thing to consider after seeing just these two decks alone, I'm like, maybe we should put shamans in our decks again.
If you don't remember, Endstar Manitan does have an attack saying discard all the energy from this Pokemon, and it does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon while also doing 90 to the active. So talking about, Shaman and its potential value. There it is.
Yeah. Um Beyond the top two tables, we finally are getting to quote unquote like the new stuff. I think Enzorark
Hmm.
is like not super like long term, but like we are getting into the megas, and that's Mega Lucario getting third place here. I know this was one that a lot
Which
of
is
people.
not which
Yeah.
is not technically new stuff, but it's new meta stuff because
Yeah.
Lucario's been out for a while. It just sucked,
Well, because
you know.
Gardevoir existed. So,
Yeah.
now that Gardevoir doesn't exist, Mega Lucario's got to be better, right? And the answer is yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, clearly it's better.
Hmm.
I got third at this
Yes.
tournament. Um, this was a card that I think when they first announced Megas, it was this and Mega Gardevoir. And you and I were both very high on Mega Lucario because we were like, you could Salvatore into this turn one going second. And you're doing 100. Oh my God.
And unfortunately, nobody plays Salvador
No.
in the deck. Womp womp.
No, but you do have the Lunatone Soul Rock engine.
Hmm.
You do get to do a decent amount of damage with Aura Jab or Mega Brave, right? 270 damage on Mega Brave for 2.
Oh yeah.
And it also allows you to play something like Hariyama. So Hariyama is a fighting type that you theoretically could attack with because of the Mega Lucario's first attack, right?
Hmm.
But it's basically a boss on an ability. So you're already playing Fighting Gongs. Like, yeah, cool. Play the Hariyama line. That's great.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the synergy of this deck is really interesting when you don't have Psychic running around everywhere in this format to just immediately one-shot you. Because, like, as you say, Aura Jab does 130 damage. It sets up the energy and stuff like that. But especially with a lot of Meowth starting around in the format, a lot of baby setup Pokemon for these stage 2s or something like that. Yeah, using Hariyama's Heath Ho Catcher ability to be able to bring up one of those Pokemon in the active. And remember that Meowth EX has a fighting type weakness. So your Aura Jab for 130 already
mhm.
then gets a knockout on that 170 Pokemon, and you have the use of Premium Power Pro to be able to reach even higher numbers if you want on top of that. But then once you set up the damage on those little Pokemon and stuff like that, you get those cheeky knockouts or whatever, and you get something big in front of you. Mega Brave only does 270 damage, which only I feel like I should have used a different word right now because that's a lot of damage, especially when you talk about Premium Power Pro, as I just mentioned earlier, increasing your attacks by 30 damage, right? So you can reach 330 very easily with this deck if you set up the Premium Power Pros. And on top of that, let's not forget that you've got the Lunatone and Soul Rock combo within this deck, right? Being able to draw cards every single time you trash a fighting energy, which could really be set up by Cypher Maniac's code breaking.
Cool things here that I just want to point out. The A spec of choice in this list is Scoop Up Cyclone. I found that to be pretty interesting. I would say it's pretty versatile. There's probably three Pokemon in the deck that you would want to use this on. The most obvious example is like, a Mega Lucario that got damaged but not knocked out, because 340 HP is a lot. So like that's
Big
the
dude.
obvious one. But I do think that there's going to be instances where you might want to scoop up Cyclone. Let me just read the card to make sure I'm not doing it incorrectly. Yeah, it's just put one Pokemon on all attached cards.
Yeah.
I think that you could theoretically do it on Meowth EX to remove that two
Mhm.
prize liability. And the other option is Hariyama, because
Yeah.
Hariyama is, it has that boss's order ability, so you could reuse it theoretically. But also, it's got 3 retreat, which is really awkward.
Big guy.
Yeah, big guy. You are playing 2 switch in the deck, but in theory, you could be in a really awkward spot where, like, you've been locked out of the game because of something like an Yveltal that's trapped you and you've used your switches. And maybe your opponent doesn't see something like a Scoop Up Cyclone coming. So, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
cool inclusion.
I like Scoop Up Cyclone a lot in this deck, not only just for being able to get something like a liability off the bench, like Meowth, or maybe out of the active like Hariyama, or even like your Mega Lucario, right? If you tank an attack and you don't want to give up 3 prizes, just scoop it on up. Put it back, and maybe evolve the bench Riolu to then hit again with a big number. But Scoop Up Cyclone, just being able to potentially reutilize your Hariyama is so interesting to me, right? Because now it's like you have access to maybe 3 Hariyamas in general. And the more times that you get this like boss's orders gusting kind of effect, the more times you can use something like Judge in your deck, right? This deck specifically, this deck list running 3 copies of Judge, which I think is really, really interesting because we talked about how hand disruption, not very present in the other lists that we've seen. If you're already getting a supporter like effect on a Pokemon ability, that leaves your supporter option to be something else, which could be that hand disruption, especially because you're not running unfair stamp in this list, right? So I really like this list, and I like this style, how like Scoop Up Cyclone provides way more value, really, because it provides like more synergy for more things in your deck rather than just picking up a Pokemon for whatever reason.
I think this is another example of when we talk about consistency too. Like, the deck is very streamlined. You're running
Mhm.
the Soul Rock Lunatone combo, you're running the Mega Lucario, and they're running Hariyama, one copy of Meowth. It's not trying to do everything all at once. It's like, I'm going to draw some cards, I'm going to attack with an efficient attacker, and everything else in the deck is just sort of designed to like push that forward. So I mentioned that because if I go back to the list, Jake, I'm going to skip down to the 8th place list.
Okay.
Jake, do you know what the new nickname for this list is?
Okay, so
You
this
won't guess
is
it.
for anyone who is looking and maybe wants to guess along with us. This is a Teal Mask Ogerpon and Lily's Clefairy kind of deck, where those are what I would assume are your two main attackers. And it's like a toolbox kind of deck, right? You have Mega Kangaskhan in here, you got a Mega Lopunny line, as well as an Iron Leaves EX. Um w- I feel like this is something box, but
Yeah,
I don't
you're on the
it's
right
like a
track.
box deck.
People are
Yeah.
calling this, Jake, slop box.
Slop box.
Yes, I don't know why. I don't know if there's like some. I don't see the S for slop.
Well,
But
I feel like it probably is just something that feels like it doesn't it or it shouldn't have any cohesion whatsoever, right? You're
No.
running a ton of Teal Mask Ogerpon, Lily's Clefairy. You're running three Lily's Clefairy and two Latias EX, and for some reason now you have three telepathic energies in your deck, right? Even though telepathic energy can only get out those psychic Pokemon, it's like you're just constantly chaining out the Lily's Clefairy. Now you are a Area Zero under depths kind of deck, so maybe you're just trying to put out all of these different kinds of Pokemon on the field as fast as possible to be able to get a full moon rondo that hits very, very hard. You know, Teal Mask Ogerpon accelerating energies, trying to draw through the deck, and then Iron Leaves KOs something with a grass weakness. Lily's Pearl, there's a big emphasis on Lily's Pearl in this deck, running 3 copies of it to be able to make your Lily's Clefairy one less prize, which I feel like is actually like a pretty solid idea in this deck, right? If there's no different things that can shut off tool cards or something like that, or get rid of tool cards, Lily's Clefairy is now a 1 prize attacker. All right, pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any copies of Tool Scrapper in the decks that we've looked at or any decks recently. And then the only other option would be the I think Stadium that shuts down
Yeah,
tools.
there's a stadium that shuts down tools, but I forget what it's called.
But that one is usually played in Dragapult and typically was
Mhm.
only played because of Bravery Charm um, and
Yeah,
the
like the
TMs.
Gardevoir matchup. Yeah.
Right, like stuff like that. So like people are just not playing that right now. And we did see in Japan Lily's Clefairy focused decks doing well, largely because, uh, there are decks that still are weak to psychic in various ways. Like Mega Lucario is weak to psychic.
Mhm.
Dragapult can be made weak to psychic because of Lily's Clefairy. And if those are two of the better decks in the format, then like, well, let me just check the box on weakness on 20% of the format. And oh, there's grass. That's the other 30%. So it's like, what are we doing? It's crazy. This is a weird deck.
Yeah, especially when I mean, with Crispin as well, being able to grab the different energies of psychic and grass means that your Teal Mask Ogrepons are always live in here. You've got a lot of copies in Energy Switch, right? Especially because Lily's Clefairy is a 2 energy attacker, Kangaskhan is a 3 energy attacker. Mega Lopunny EX could be a 1 or 2 energy attacker, depending on the attack that you utilize for the turn, right? Energy switch is going to be huge to get those energies off of Teal Mask Ogerpon and move them to a different body, very different than what we saw in the Teal Mask Mega Arboliva EX deck.
I also want to point out a cool little combo. You may have, if you said this and I forgot, apologies. But like, so like you said, we are an Area Zero deck. We are an Area Zero deck that I don't know if you noticed is running 3 copies of Meowth EX,
Yes.
which is wild. But the Chen Pao, I've never played this personally. I've seen people play it, but this Chen Pao has an ability when you play it from your hand, discard a stadium and play. So you can
Mhm.
play down your Meowths, fill up your bench, and then just play this little guy down and discard all of those Meowths that you don't want as a liability. And like it's pretty cool. That's like the old was there an old Pumpkaboo that used to do this? Or
Yes, there was a Pumpkaboo from Cosmic Eclipse that did that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So excellent. I love this. This is great.
Yeah. Very nice to be able to thwart your opponent, not only from being able to take some extra prizes on some of your support Pokemon, but also maybe they don't get value out of the stadium, right? If you actively play Area Zero under depths to be able to get that setup, now they don't get the value of the extra bench spots because there are still several Terra Pokemon running around in format in various ways, right? So, could be really interesting in that sort of matchup. But yeah, I can see how this is a slop deck. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is definitely a toolboxy kind of deck.
it's one of those decks that I don't know if I remember there being box type decks like this to this degree right at the beginning of a new format. Usually, this style of deck emerges once a format has been like solved, and then people. But
Mhm.
like, I mean, I guess we
I
know
feel
what
like
the
when
format's going to
the
be.
I feel like when the Ogre Puns came out, that deck
Yeah.
came out right away, that kind of toolboxy thing. But to your point, yeah, like toolbox decks usually don't show up at the very beginning of a format. It's usually later in a format after we see some events and things like that.
But yeah, I wanted to point that out now because this is the opposite of what I would call a streamlined deck.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, it works. People are playing it. It's doing well. So, but
I do want to give a quick shout out to the fifth place list festival lead. I have seen more and more people talk about how they are having success with festival lead, which is so interesting because I've dunked on this deck so many times. I feel like on the podcast, right? Sean is a beloved fan of this deck. If you do not know festival lead, you get this stadium called Festival Grounds onto the field. And if you do, you get these various other different effects. One of the main attackers, Diplin, right, has an ability that says if your attack knocks out the Pokemon or your opponent's active Pokemon and you have Festival Grounds on the field, you get to attack again after they choose a new active Pokemon. So essentially getting a two different attack combo. Thwacky, if you have Festival Lead on the field, has an ability that is like Quick Search, right? We talked about last week how good Quick Search was in the format, and Thwacky is basically that. When you have Festival Lead on the field, can grab any card in your deck and put it in your hand. You've got also the Sea King with Festival Lead. This Pokemon may use its attack twice if the first. Oh, yeah. So Diplin and Sea King having the same ability, just depending on like weakness and stuff like that that you could utilize. But yeah, especially once again, you've got Dawn. Dawn, love this card. Being able to search all these different evolutions.
Dawn in this version of the deck is insane to me. I'm just gonna pull. I'm just gonna say it.
It has less value because you don't run a stage 2, right? You're a bunch of stage 1s, but the fact of the matter is that it's a consistency to be able to help you find like your
Sure.
evolutions while also getting a basic Pokemon on the field,
It finds you two
something
things
of the
instead of
sort.
one, which, like, yeah, I
Yeah.
get. You can. I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I'm not sure Dawn is necessary in this version of the list,
Mhm.
but
I think
if you
it's an
like,
interesting option though, because like, you run something like bug catching set. Bug
yeah,
catching set can't find you your Psyduck, right? Which might be
yeah,
needed
true.
in some of these Dusknor matchups, things like that. So it's an option to help find there if you can't find like a Pokepad or maybe if you're item locked or something of the sort to be able to get these guys going. And then Rabska.
Rabska's
Rabska in
great.
this list.
I
Yeah,
mean,
being able
Rabska
to help.
is the goat. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this too, Jake. It's a little wild to me that we were playing Rabska and Psyduck and Shaman, like all three in this build. Like, at least
Yeah.
back in the day, you would pick one in theory and you'd play that of whatever effect it is. I get it though. Like, if the Rabska, because it's a 1/1 line, it's an evolution, it may get
Mhm.
knocked out and then you can't get it back online immediately the turn after. So Rabska's great against Dragapult, especially because this deck does really suffer in the Dragapult matchup.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. This is a cool list. I might have to play around with it myself at some point. I yeah, I
Especially if you had Secret Box before, Secret Box absolutely went down to the wayside. Secret Box is in this list. It's still a relatively expensive ace spec, despite its not much use of play. Still like a $12 ace spec. But if you had it for previous formats, you can still use it for this deck. And overall, outside of that, pretty cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Festival Elite. I like that this is around again. I think, especially now that there's not a metal type that has grass resistance. I think for a window of time between Goldengo and some other decks, it was just kind of awkward because your numbers get totally messed up if Pokemon have resistance to you.
But now you talked about in the Teal Mask Ogrepon and Arboliva deck how much grass weakness could be
Yep.
a benefit, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty solid the way that this deck just kind of gets boosted a little bit.
Going back to the list here, we're not going to go too deep into these, but we still see Dragapult here in 4th place. Absol box, so Mega Kangaskhan, Mega Absol in 6th place. But there's a couple, I think maybe 3 more decks that were in sort of that top tier that I want to mention. We'll start with, I know this one is like a favorite of a lot of people that like, they just felt like it did not have a good moment to shine before rotation, which is Cynthia's Garchomp EX. Jake, what are we looking at here? I mean, yeah, why are people excited?
One quick note before I do that, just want to say, how we talked about, I think last week, how Dragapult can have so many different partners in the deck. The
Yes.
4th place Dragapult was playing a Snow-Run Mega Frostlass line
Oh,
in there,
okay.
not Dusknoir or anything like
I
that.
skipped
So we
over
don't
it
have to
because I
spend.
just assumed.
Yeah. Well, no. But it's because most of it is just Dragapult, right? But instead of Dusknoir or Blaziken, which I've hyped up a little bit as of late, it's running Mega Frostlass, which is very, very cool. But going into Garchomp, because Garchomp has not really been relevant, but now it has gotten a little bit more value in the post-rotation format, right? Cynthia's Garchomp being able to utilize Corkscrew Dive for 100 damage as a fighting-type Pokemon, not a Dragon-type Pokemon, a fighting-type Pokemon that's very relevant to know. Corkscrew Dive, drawing until you have 6 cards in hand, is great for your setup, right? Being able to constantly have stuff, especially as hand disruption is not as viable within the format, and then eventually go in with Dragonic Buster for 260 damage. It's very similar to Mega Lucario,
Yeah.
right? Where like the first attack is a setup attack that has good damage into it, and then the second attack is just a big hitter, go all in. And with the consistency, Cynthia's Gabite has that Champion's Call ability. So as you're evolving into your Garchomp, you get to use Champion's Call, search your deck for a Cynthia's Pokemon, put it in your hand, and especially with a Stage 2 evolution line, you love being able to put Cynthia's Pokemon in your hand, especially because you also have a support Stage 1 line of Cynthia's Roserade. So Cynthia's Roserade, with that Cheer On to Glory ability, attacks used by your Cynthia's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And this stacks as well on top of it and is a consistent static. Is that the word? It's a static ability that is
It's
always
just
active. It's not
consistent,
like
right? It's always on.
Yeah.
Whenever you
So
attack.
now your Cynthia's Garchomp is using 290 damage, 320 damage for its attack to be able to stay on the field. And you've got some survivability effects like Cynthia's Power Weight to give 70 HP to a 330 HP Cynthia's Garchomp for 400, which it's grass week, so can still get one shot by some
By
of these
Teal
other decks.
Mask.
But it's a little bit harder to do that, right? Especially when you talk about Arboliva and it's 160 damage attack. Now that 320 is not even going to sniff it, right?
No, it does do, like, I think Arboliva is not really great necessarily into this, but the Teal Mask Ogrepons will continue to be a problem.
But it's 400 damage. That's a lot of
no,
energies that you have to get.
Any non-grass deck is going to struggle knocking this out with one shot. So you're almost always going to be safe. I like playing the Neo Upper Energy here too, because it is a stage 2 that requires 2 energy in which you discard the energy to do that big attack. And then the other, I think, card that really benefits this deck is this Rocky Fighting Energy. So this Rocky Fighting Energy, a new special energy from Perfect Order. You prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to the fighting Pokemon it's attached to. The reason that matters is like, hey, Alakazam, if I'm playing an Alakazam deck and I hit a Cynthia's Garchomp, I think I'm just cooked because I might have 2 enhanced hammers, but I certainly don't have 4 in my deck.
Yeah.
And so all the opponent has to do is just sort of wait me out mostly. But also Mega Absol, it won't be able to instantly knock out a Cynthia's Garchomp. So there are a number of attacks out there that have like effect attacks that this really helps that Cynthia's Garchomp to be like, I know I'm 400 HP. You're gonna do all of that in damage to me. There's no way around it. So
Especially when your A-spec of choice is Neo Upper and you're not running Unfair Stamp, you're not running Judge, right? Some of these hand disruption cards that have become way more popular in the post-rotation format. So that's a good like mitigation as you're talking about to some of those decks to where like, okay, Rocky Energy can maybe carry it there, especially because you're running a couple copies of Hilda in this deck, right? Hilda being able to find any energy card, right? It could be Neo Upper, could be Rocky, could be a basic energy because your fighting gongs, right, that you have to run in this list only look for basic fighting energy. So really cool combo in my opinion.
yeah. Outside of that, the other 2 decks I wanted to touch on, we have it says Rocket Spite Ops. I'm going to look into the deck and see what it actually is. Oh, I mean, yeah. It's basically a Rocket Spite Ops deck. So the Pokemon that everyone was sitting here like, oh, this is a good partner Pokemon for Mewtwo. I guess in this deck, nope, it's the show. It's not going to be sidelined by Mewtwo. Team Rocket Spite Ops is the show, the main event here. So if you don't remember what this does, stage 1, the ability is charging up. You can attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon once a turn. And then its attack does 30 damage for each of your Team Rocket's Pokemon in play for 2 energy, which you'll always be able to attack with this. If you have 1 in hand and 1 in the discard, that's all you'll ever need.
Exactly.
And I guess if you have, 6 Team Rockets in play, that's 180. So this deck really banking off of Grass Weakness is what it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, being able to utilize Team Rocket's Spadops as a primary attacker, when especially with that ability, you only need the energy attachment for turn, essentially, to be able to get this online and going. You've got some sort of like different counters within the format, right? You do have a copy of Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX, even though it may not be your primary focus to be able to attack, to get a ton of damage out onto the field, right? It's 160 base, but discarding 2 energy from your base Pokemon, which could be those Spadops, is 120 more, which sets up 280 damage, which, then you get into manipulations of like other stuff going on. Like it can be a good cleanup attacker in there. You've got the Team Rocket Sneasel for Strike the Sleepy to be able to get extra damage out somewhere, to be able to snipe a Pokemon in there. You have Team Rocket's Mimikyu to choose an active Pokemon's Terra attack, use it as the attack. Can have some flexibility, especially in the Dragapult matchup, right? Because you could go Team Rocket's Mimikyu with Lily's Clefairy in this deck, right? To be able to one-shot a Dragapult and be able to snipe 6 damage counters somewhere. And we talked about Alakazam, how much we love Alakazam. Well, Alakazam's counter in this deck is Team Rocket's Articuno with the repelling Veil ability to prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to basic Team Rocket's Pokemon. Just stick this in the active against Alakazam and they literally can't do anything.
You can't kill the Articuno, but if you can boss up the Spidops, you can get
if
there.
they allow Spidops to stay, like, to get a Spidops on the field, you don't even, if you don't play Spidops, then you're just like, play Articuno, pass.
This is why I will say, if you are running Alakazam, I do encourage everyone to run 1 copy of Lily's Clefairy.
Mm-hmm.
The weakness with Psychic on certain matchups and the Dragapult matchup, too valuable. And also, if your opponent literally can leave a Team Rocket's Articuno as the only Pokemon in play and you just lose. Oh, that's bad. That's a feels bad.
Yeah, but also like you can especially with Lily's Clefairy, right? I know we're talking about the Team Rockets list, but I promise we'll stop talking about Alakazam in a second. Um with Wonder Patch, Wondrous
Hmm.
Patch, you can get that you can slam that Clefairy down on the bench, use Wondrous to patch, and then go ahead and attach an energy from hand onto that Pokemon. So there's a couple different ways that you can get that online to build the counter. And, you'll see Lily's Clefairy in a lot of different decks, including this Team Rockets one, right? Because it just has a ton of value in a sense. I really enjoy that bug catching set is actually in this Team Rockets deck, right? To be
I
able
mean,
to
it makes
chain
sense.
your Spadops and your basic grass energies. I really like that flavor.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think I'd never really thought of the Team Rocket Spidops as, yes, it can be an attacker, but I've never thought of it as like, no, this is the guy, and I'm going to build the whole deck around this, and everything else is just a box supporting the
Yeah.
Spidops of all things. But I guess when like half the meta is weak to grass or whatever, like that'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, and plus with the Pokemon, right? You have Team Rocket's Proton that gets
Yeah,
basic Team Rocket's Pokemon to put in your hand to be able to swarm them on the bench. You have Team Rocket's Ariana to, if you have only Team Rocket's Pokemon in play, which is very easy for this deck, only having Lily's Clefairy as the non-Team Rocket's Pokemon, draw 8 cards. But by the way, Team Rocket's Factory, right? It's such a good stadium within this deck with your Team Rocket supporters. I remember this did me so well in the pre-release. To be able to constantly draw cards in my Tyrantrum deck. Think about using Team Rocket's Ariana to draw until you have 8 in hand, especially if you have a low hand size, and then go in with Team Rocket's Factory to draw basically till you have 10 cards in hand, which I think is like very cool synergy and stuff like that. Um,
yeah. I mean, this deck will be fun to play with. I think some version of a Team Rockets engine, I think, is also going to be very successful post rotation. Maybe it's this
I think it's
one.
going to be
Maybe it's,
viable for sure.
yeah, maybe it's this.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Porygon or the Honchkrow. But it's too nice of a package of cards that is searchable via the transceiver. So you don't have to worry about putting a Meowth EX on the bench
Mhm.
in order to find your supporters.
And I just love how, like, I feel like, I mean, outside of Secret Box, right, which is in this deck is so cheap.
Oh yeah.
Like, Pokemon right now, I feel like is in such a crazy spot where, like, a lot of these decks you could build pretty cheap.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, if you look at this, I, I'm trying to think of like what came out in perfect order that is in any of these decks, though.
Well, in the pre-release kit, you had Petrol, Pokepad is in
Well,
perfect order, right? Like,
it is, but like, what's a
Team
new
Rocket
card?
Factory was new cards. No, not really any new cards, but like you had like reprints among like the pre-release kits and the main set, which is just so cool because I think Bug Catching set was also in the Superior pre-release kit on top of
Yeah.
that. So like, yeah, there's just these like really cool, interesting. I don't know. Like I think Pokemon what they're doing right now is really cool as typical. I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like Pokemon does a pretty all right job.
No, what my main thought though was like in terms of like new cards from perfect order that like, if you're Pokemon, you want something from your new set to shine to like do well. It is a bit weird that even post rotation, like they designed perfect order knowing that
Mhm.
this set will be the first set of a new block. So they know all the cards that are going to be rotating, what people are going to want. And then you look and you're like, other than the special energy, like I'm sure I'm missing something, but like it just doesn't seem like there's any gas in the set as it stands right now. Like with
Meowth EX.
yeah, Meowth. Okay, I will grant you that Meowth is fire.
Meowth
Meowth
is
is
the
going to be
lone
good.
shining point. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like the only thing. Like everything else is just like little buffs or format changes that really
Yeah.
propel it.
Yeah, it'll be yeah, I think I'll be interested to I would love to be a fly on the wall, let's say. in a meeting with the Pokemon company, and they're like talking about why is nobody playing cards from the new set? And it's like, well, they are playing with Meowth, sir.
Well, I think
Um,
it's one of those things too that like the telepathic and rocky energy, those have
yeah,
been pretty good within the sets and stuff like that. But I think especially when you talk about what was I going to say, like setup sets, right? This is a block set or startup kind of deal. I think it's going to be one of those things that like maybe right now we don't see the value in the set, right? Because I mean, if you like look online and stuff, people hate this set. People think
yeah,
this
yeah,
set is bad, but like you see these kind of different cards that maybe in the future with some other rotations or maybe some other sets in the future that really give this, balance, like Rose's Encouragement, right? We haven't talked about
yeah.
Rose's Encouragement yet, but with all the stage 2s running around, maybe there's a format if they keep going in this direction for the stage 2s that those then become something that people do want to utilize, and we haven't even talked about like Jacinth, right? Even though it's very basic and like heal 150 damage from your psychic Pokemon, like that's something as well. Mega Starmie got a lot of hype at the beginning, but then really fell off. Maybe it comes back a little bit when some of the other cards leave, things like that. So, which is so good for us players, right? Because that means that a lot of stuff here is cheap. Like the
Yes.
Mega Zygarde is $185 right now, USD. The gold one, the gold Mega Zygarde is $185, and the SIR illustration is $110 right now. In this, if you're watching this like many, many weeks after this episode releases or whatever, Perfect Order officially releases later this week, and prices are already this low.
Does it officially
So it's
release on
pretty
Friday, or
good.
does it officially release on last Friday? I think it was last
Or
Friday. It
wait.
officially released
Oh,
on the
yeah, you know
27th,
what?
but
It
still,
officially released last Friday. I'm
still
getting mixed up
very
with
with One Piece, yeah.
One Piece's sets release. Yeah. One
But
Piece
like,
officially releases later this week. But like
it's
to
still
the point,
new.
it's so cheap. Yeah, it's brand new and it's super cheap right now.
I don't think that this will necessarily impact long term, like the scalper market, because we are still in the
Yeah.
30th anniversary year. Who knows? Like, maybe Chaos Rising will also be a bit of a weak set. I don't know. Like
Mhm.
Greninja, people like Greninja, so I could see whatever the SIR for that is pulling the set up a little higher. But beyond that, it'd be kind of nice to have two weak sets in a row to sort of cool the market down a little bit.
Mhm.
And then look, everybody can pull all their money into whatever the 30th anniversary thing in the fall is. Like,
Yeah.
that's going to be a set that's not really for players as much. It's cool. I'm sure there's going to be awesome cards, but like, as somebody who wants to like buy stuff to play and actually open packs again to pull things to play,
Mhm.
I don't know. I kind of like that they're not giving us all the heat right now. Could be
Yeah. I
nice.
mean, because there's still like beautiful, beautiful
Yes.
cards in this set, in my opinion. Like I absolutely love the special illustrations of Zygarde, Meowth, Rose's Encouragement, Clefairy, Jakith. Like, and then the illustration rares, like there's a Rowlet in this set.
It's
Illustration
true.
rare, which some of you in the Metapod Discord server have posted. Forest of Vitality, the full art stadium is
Yeah.
only $8.50. And we've talked about it in a couple different lists how cool that card is, right? So, like, there's an absolute steal right there. Wondrous Patch in your Alakazam decks. The ultra rare version of that card, it's less than $5
How
USD.
much is the full art Pokepad going for?
It is $22, which I
That'll
think
come
is pretty
down.
fair. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it'll probably come down a little bit more. I maybe like $20, or maybe like 19. I don't know how much lower it'll go, because the set's already out, as you're saying. But like that's a pretty decent price as a super playable trainer card in like that like max rarity version, right? Because I don't think there's a gold version
No.
of the Pokepad. Yeah, because everything has prices on it on TCG players. So that's
They
max
stopped
rarity Pokepad.
yeah, they stopped printing gold items sometime last year. They
Thank
just
God.
switched it over to full art. And I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
down. I like the full art thing treatments.
Yeah.
I don't know. Gold's fine,
We've been
but
big fans of that.
yeah. Um well, overall, I am excited. We still have one more week of this pod, Jake, before rotation actually hits.
Yeah, so I don't know what we're doing next week.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what we're talking about next week. But if you got suggestions, if you have something you want us to talk about, I think right now is the perfect time. Hit us up in Discord and be like, "Yo, random topic. Let's talk about X, Y, or Z." It can be about playing. It can be about collecting. This is your call to tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that note, that's going to be the end for us over at the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake, that's Sean. We will see you next Tuesday or whenever you listen to this podcast. Thank you so much for watching or listening.